Room. We are back on the record, so to speak, picking up our conversation of the facilities plan. And we're going to turn over to Mr. Baker to present the update of where we're at and then continue our conversation. Mr. Baker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm going to keep my introductory comments extremely brief. All the information here up on the board is also included in greater detail in the handouts. So if you haven't gotten one in the back of the room, please pick one up. This is the same material that appeared in the council packet over the weekend, so people have had an opportunity to review it in advance of the meeting. This is continuing discussion of the council top priority action item on the development of a facilities sustainability plan. Real briefly, this is a process that began in September of last year with some discussion on the issues that we're facing. We moved into resource allocation discussion, and more recently have been focusing on options. The first meeting took place last month on options that the council and community may want to consider in terms of facility improvements. This meeting will continue that options discussion. What we heard quite clearly from the majority of the council last month was that the options should really focus heavily on addressing the needs of the police station and should remain entirely within the $16 million total project budget that was identified when we met to discuss resources back earlier in the process. So what you see here, presented option 4 and option 5 are responding to those criteria and are presented in addition to the 3 options that were introduced at that meeting back in March. Again, very briefly, what option 4 would provide is an addition of approximately 13,200 square feet to the south side of the police station. Earlier options looked at additions to the east side. As we analyzed this option, it became clear that the south side addition would allow for some cost reduction, give us more flexibility around parking, and allow the dispatch center to remain in its current location. In addition to the addition, there would be interior renovation of the remainder, the current police station. And in terms of improvements to Village Hall, since most of the budget would be directed to the police station, we would recommend short-term maintenance that would improve the most urgently needed systems in Village Hall, allowing it to function for the next 5 to 7 years before we might incur more significant system maintenance. The price tag estimated at about $14.5 million. That's about a midpoint of the range for police. We estimate that the short-term maintenance improvements for Village Hall are approximately $600,000. Option 5 says that we would look at renovation of both buildings, and because there is more available space in Village Hall and the space needs of the police station far exceed the space there, that to make this work would involve relocation of certain functions from the police station to Village Hall to even out how the space is allocated between both buildings. We would envision that this option would use the entire $16 million budget because it recognizes that we have estimated just the system maintenance costs, if we wanted to maintain these buildings for the long term, are approximately $10.4 million for both the police station and Village Hall. Again, a lot of this information is in the materials provided. I'm going to stop here, but I'll also point out that Mark Bushhouse from Williams Architects is here again this evening, and he can certainly help with any of the discussion on the technical elements of either of these options. Mayor, turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. For those watching, what we're going to do is, what we've done in the past is start with an opportunity for the Village Council to have a conversation, ask for any questions or input from staff or from our architects, and then we'll pause, we'll open up for any questions or comments from those in the audience, and then we'll come back to council and see if anybody has any additional thoughts, comments, or questions. So I've got my thoughts, but why don't I turn to my colleagues and see if people have questions or comments from staff.
I have some comments.
Comment away, please.
So I did want to start by thanking Williams Architects and thanking the staff for submitting these two new options to staff. I think they more accurately reflect the direction that was given by the majority of council in the previous meetings. From my perspective, to respect the will of the voters expressed last year at referendum, the council established a budget that a facility solution be funded within existing revenue sources, which is how we got to this resources constraint. So therefore, I'm pleased to see this option 4, which is the small addition and renovation of the police station along with maintenance of the village hall. The option, from my perspective, appears to reflect both the will of the voters and the council. It both respects the budget parameter and allows us not only to maintain our village hall and police station buildings, but also to make functional upgrades and improvements to support a 21st century police force in our current police station. So thus, at this time, my position is that staff should focus on further exploring this option 4. As we continue to develop and refine plans, I do want to encourage staff and the architects to be very mindful of cost. The ultimate facility solution should really focus on necessary maintenance and necessary operational improvements. And in my opinion, we should avoid including nice-to-have features. So I encourage staff and the architects to find ways to continue to cut costs and realize operational efficiencies. From my perspective, precarious financial condition of the state especially necessitates that we be ever mindful of ways that we can reduce costs and ultimately control the cost of government for the taxpayer. So that's one of my focuses, but I'm very pleased with what's come forward and look forward to further exploration of option 4.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments, thoughts?
I'll comment.
Please, Commissioner Patino.
I really like option 4. I'm glad it's within budget. I'm really happy that the police station is going to be renovated, added on to. I think it's really important. And, I just wanted to hear from the police officers. Are you happy with this? You've seen the plans. Do you think this is something that you can live with for 20 years? Is it what you want?
Yes, we work closely with both Assistant Village Manager Mike Baker and Village Manager Fieldman, as well as with the architect. 50% more space is a vast improvement, and as you can see, as Mike outlined, it addresses most of our operational deficiencies. So pretty excited.
I think that's really important. I think it's important that it came in a budget. I think that it's important that it stays here in downtown Downers Grove. As David said, people really wanted the facilities to stay here. I think it's great that we can improve Village Hall at the same time. 10 years, 15 years, if we decide to build a new Village Hall, so be it. If we run into all kinds of money and we can do that, that's great. But, I think this is a great plan. It moves us forward. We're making progress. The police station has been, in such shambles for so long that this is great to see. So I'm very happy with this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you. The residents made it pretty clear that the $46 to $52 million price tag was too high, but they also made it very clear that they wanted a great police department. They appreciate the services they get, and they want those services to continue, and we need to also plan for the future. Police stations now are going to, with technology and things are going to change over the years, and you need something that's going to address the future as well. So I think option 4 was good within the budget. It makes sense. As Commissioner Patino said, I'd like to make sure that our police department is happy with this plan, that they can perform at the great standard that they're providing now, and that it can continue. I relayed to Mr. Fieldman that I'm not into the, how thick the walls are and where the washrooms go and, that type, the nitty-gritty of construction. I want it to work. And I think option 4 gives us that opportunity. I think, as we move along, I think we'll get to that point. I think it's kind of like the way we went with Station 2 with our fire department, and oddly enough, back then when we did Station 2, it was the police department that said, okay, well, we need changes to the police station, and we also need a new fire station, and they were kind enough to let the fire station go first, so hopefully this is payback. No.
You might take that one back.
So,
Years ago.
So, hopefully this will progress. It seems like it's a reasonable budget. And I also relayed to the village manager a concern about having workout areas and that type of thing, things that would not necessarily be needed, I believe. But other than that, I'm happy with option 4.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose.
Thanks, Mark. From the beginning on this process, I've said that taking care of the police station was my number 1 priority. And option 4, I think, gets that done. I'm not interested in an option that doesn't solve the operational issues, and this gets 95% of the way there. And what we're looking at is vehicle parking. Not that isn't important, guys. But I think it solves the glaring needs that have existed for far too long. So I'm excited by option 4 and look forward to see what comes in the future. Thanks.
Commissioner White.
I concur pretty much with everything that's been said so far. The only caveat I just want to emphasize is that while I'm personally prepared to direct staff to move ahead with the implementation of option 4, the caveat on that, though, would be that I just want to double check that the police department is satisfied that their deficiencies are met and that this really does fulfill the needs that they have. Subject to that, my preference would be that we direct staff to start looking at implementation.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnett, any comments? No obligation. You want to offer?
We've thrown a lot of kind of empty platitudes around it. I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say, I really don't care what the police department says and I don't want to work on their efficiencies. I suspect that's not going to be uttered by much of the village council. Obviously those attributes aside of the system, the work the architects have done with the police department, our staff is to be commended. I think it's a bad plan. I think it takes, what I heard, maybe I didn't hear it the same, but I didn't hear build a police station downtown for $16 million. I heard don't spend $52 million, which Mr. Schwimmer commented on the $52 million accuracy number in his presentation. But this takes on new debt to cement a condition, meaning our police station at some of our most opportune, highest rent, potential return for the village land, which other communities around us have seen fit to do something different. Do I want to copy everybody else? No, but I don't want to reinvent the wheel. And when towns like Clarendon Hills and towns like Naperville decided to build new police stations, they thought better of taking their prime downtown real estate. This plan, in addition to taking on new debt, it cements a police structure that it's going to be updated and added on to, and that's great, and I'm sure we'll do our best to plan for the future, but it's a retrofit. And a retrofit is what it is. Is it less complex? Yeah, it's got not less moving parts. I suppose it probably does. So does a rotary lawnmower. You don't necessarily get value just from less parts. I think this is a short-term, short-sighted process that is in reaction to a largely misleading public referendum. And I think that's a lousy way to plan for 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. I think we can do better within the budget. I think we can do better. I'm not suggesting spending $52 million or $152 million or $28 million. I think we could do better if we were willing to free ourselves up from the constraints of saying, put it on that site and make it as simple as possible. This is a long-term investment that's going to outlive all of us. And if we had a blank slate of paper and said, how would we design our downtown, it'd be hard pressed to find a lot of examples where that's what they chose. I'm thinking there's a reason for that. We're dealing with convenience is what we're dealing with, and I think that's a problem. It also literally grows the footprint of our government. I'm not sure that's a great idea. So I obviously have gone fifth or sixth here, sorry, Mayor, sixth. And clearly I'm in a radical minority, so we'll just continue to move forward. But I'm disappointed with, not the plan, the drawings, the work you guys did and the work you guys have done is not my issue. My issue is the long-term wisdom behind choosing to solidify that space in this use, while at the same time taking on new debt. I just don't think that's very low.
Thank you, Commissioner. I've said this before, I think I'm the only person in this room, at least at this table, not in this room, who has been at this 3 times. And each time it's gotten derailed by something, and there's been different people around the table. And each time, there was at least one, if not 2, 2.5, people didn't like the plan. Every plan that's been proposed for facilities has been a compromise. Change the names, change the faces, change the location. There's at least been 1 or 2 people that were violently opposed to what was on the table. But we moved forward by consensus, and my real concern is that every time our fine men and women of the police department go forward and get, I think it's every 3 years, Chief, for CLIA certification. Every 3 years they go forward for CLIA certification. I've been honored enough to have been invited to the report out from the folks from CLIA who report out on the preliminary findings, and they rave about our police force and the fine men and women who are in it, but every single time they take me aside and say, Mayor, you've got to do something about that police station. It's the only black mark on an otherwise outstanding organization. And notwithstanding the facilities you guys have been shoehorned into, you still managed to be in the top 1% of the police force of the entire country, so kudos to you. We got to get this done for a couple of reasons. Number one, costs don't go down. The longer we sit around and twiddle our thumbs with this, the more expensive it's going to get, and so all this talk about saving money is going to go right out the window. And it's finally occurred to me that probably the best thing we can do is to unhinge the Village Hall discussion from the police department discussion altogether. And let's be very clear, ladies and gentlemen, option 4 does nothing for Village Hall. You might throw some money at some very basic maintenance issues, but at some point in time, you're just going to be lighting that. You might as well just light that money on fire, because you're going to be spending a lot of good money after bad money, and it doesn't solve the problem. But I've become comfortable with the idea of unhinging those 2 things, because I candidly think the Village Hall conversation has become an albatross for the police department conversation, and that's not fair. That needs to be resolved. One thing I like about option 4 is it's all police station and really does nothing for Village Hall. Now that kicks the can down the road, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to talk about this again. It might not be the same 7 people, but we're going to be talking about this again, is it's got to be addressed. But I'm okay with it, because I'm okay with it in the sense that, like every other proposal we've had, it's been a compromise. It achieves, number 1, the solution of filling in just about all those dots, those circles for the police station. And like everyone else, we all want to make sure that the chief and the deputy chiefs and the people who have to work in there are going to be able to get something that, albeit Spartan, is functional. It's going to be able to deliver what you need to do in order to provide the services this community has come to expect. I suspect there won't be a lot of room for fluff and stuff, because that budget's pretty tight. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of extra, and I think that what dollars there are going to be put towards, by necessity, the highest priority functions within the building. I'm confident of that. I want to commend this process, though, because whether you like the current proposal or not, it's one that really manifested itself as part of this conversation. This was not a proposal that was earlier considered, at least not that I can recall specifically. So this came about because of these conversations and prior conversations and input from the community. And the fact that we can get to something that solves the police station issue we can move forward with the police station issue, resolve it before it gets more expensive. I think it's just something we have to do. And while I may have issues here and there, I'm sure everybody has issues here and there, I think this is a reasonable, cost-effective solution that is a result of some good discussions that came up with some new ideas that hadn't previously been considered. Fire Station 2, somebody mentioned Fire Station 2. I remember when we were having conversations about designing and building Fire Station number 2, and there were a number of firefighters who were in the room, and afterwards I turned to one of them and said, I can't remember who it was, I said, well, aren't you glad that the fire station's finally getting done after all these years of discussion? And the response back to me was, no, I'll believe it when I can sleep in it. So I suspect there are at least 3 people in this room that aren't going to believe any of this until they can actually sit down in it. And I just think we need to get this done. You can't really argue with this cost. You can argue with the location. Frankly, I was a big advocate of moving the police station somewhere else, but I heard a lot of people had different opinions. Heck, there were people on this council with the last plan that had differences of opinion on that point. There's differences of opinion in the community, and whether you think it's right or wrong, there is a large swatch of the community that believes that Village Hall and the police station ought to be centrally located. I don't particularly continue to be that sentimental about it, but I can't argue with people who feel otherwise. Again, that's a difference of opinion. So I'm fine with pursuing option 4. Obviously, we're going to do what we can to come in under budget. We do that with every single project that we undertake, so that goes without saying. Obviously, we want to make sure that it actually achieves the goals and objectives and functional requirements of our police force. That goes without saying. I have every confidence in the world, having been through this process with parking decks and with Fire Station 2 and with other projects, that we have the right people in this organization to make that happen. I'm not worried about that. But I'll go back to what I started with. This merely kicks Village Hall down the road. And it's not 5, 10, 15 years from now. It will not be around in this current state in that period of time. There will be a colossal waste of money spending on maintenance and repair on an obsolete building that I agree is in the wrong place. So the other thing I like about this, and I'm just going to warn everybody right now, is that option 4 leaves open far more creative solutions for the Village Hall conversation. And maybe if they're segregated, we can have that creative conversation about ways that don't incur a lot of new debt or cost to do something different with Village Hall and the space that perhaps if we did have a blank map of Downers Grove, things would have been laid out and done a little bit differently. So that's the other reason why I'm interested in this, because if it means we get a high priority done and maybe it unshackles us to be more creative with solutions for Village Hall before we do burn a big pile of money wasting it on maintenance and other things for this building that really is throwing good money after bad, then I'm open to that. And I also am love with the understanding that expanding the police station's footprint where it currently is will not unduly inhibit our ability to have creative options with respect to land development for where the fleet garage and where Village Hall currently reside. I would have a different opinion if I thought that was unduly impactful. But my understanding is it's not. So those options remain, and I continue to be an advocate of those options. But I just want to get that on the table right
It
now.
doesn't grow the actual site.
Correct. So it doesn't make it any worse than it is right now. It leaves open the current options. So that's why I'm happy, because we can turn to that later, and I fully intend to.
Mayor, could I?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted two items. One, Downers Grove is not a blank slate. We're a built-out community. We're dealing with reality. So I think, I appreciate the reality we're dealing with.
I could have talked with
the ability to accomplish this much, both maintenance and operational, and with a focus on our police, is something I really appreciate. And I commended the work of staff and the work of our architect, but I also wanted to specifically commend Commissioner White and the work that he's done on this issue. I think, Commissioner White, you've been a very good thought leader, in proposing new ideas and challenging both the council and our staff to think more creatively. And I just wanted to publicly say thank you for that, because I think that a lot of that creativity is what's allowed us to come to this solution where we're accomplishing so much, yet staying within that very limited budget that we can accomplish with this project. Thanks.
Thanks.
Well, I briefly, I totally concur with everything that Martelli said regarding the advantages of decoupling the projects. Because I remember it was over a year ago, I spoke with Mike Baker on Main Street. And if we can sell the existing site for a significant sum of money, absolutely. I just didn't want to have a plan that was dependent upon it, not knowing. And the metaphor I offered was a safety squeeze versus a suicide squeeze. And that once you get the bid, if a condo or apartment developer comes in and makes a nice bid for this property, yes, absolutely, put that money on the table. I just didn't want us, to mix metaphors, go over the slope of the ski hill without that offer in hand. And then what that does allows us to free the police needs from that other larger discussion, which may take more time, without expanding the footprint in the Civic Center area all that significantly.
Right.
So that's one of the things I think why this is, I concur, I very much concur with what you said on those points.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to echo what you said about the kicking of the can with regard to Village Hall. We are accomplishing a lot with this plan, and it's, I think, right that we focus on the police station to begin with. But while we're accomplishing quite a bit with regard to the police station, $600,000 in terms of maintenance for Village Hall is a drop in the bucket. What's that, about a tenth, Mike, of the actual maintenance that we know to be necessary right now in Village Hall? And I don't know that you get a whole lot of support for dropping $6 million or so of maintenance into this building. If I remember my history on this building correctly, it was moved into as Village Hall on a temporary basis around the time Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. That's a heck of a long time ago. My math is right. I think if you add Commissioner Olson and I together, you might get back there. This absolutely is a conversation. Yeah, I might have overestimated. Hey, you got to try, right? This is a conversation we have to continue to have. This is a good first step, but there's a lot more to do.
I agree with that, too.
Yeah, and I agree with everything Mayor Tully said. I mean, I can appreciate your feelings on Village Hall. I think they should be separate. But, like you said, this story has been around for many, many years. Through councils and mayors, and it's the same
Three
story.
police chiefs.
So I think this is real progress. I mean, we're coming in at a good number. It's progress. A police station needs to get redone. They deserve a place that is great to work in. I mean, everybody loves the police department and loves the services in Downers Grove, but you also need a good place to work and be in. So, the story can't keep going down the line. I mean, you say the Village Hall gets kicked down the road, we're kicking the can down the road. But this whole thing has been kicked down the road for so many years. It's time to stop and make some progress. That's how I feel about this. I mean, not everyone's going to get what they want. Not everyone's going to be happy. Is it the best plan? No, but it's a really good plan.
It's the best plan that reasonable people with different opinions, with the resources
Yes.
given, can come up with.
See, that's why we have you, because you put it in those words.
And it pulls variables out of the polynomials.
We're back to the polynomials.
Thank you. Before I open it up to audience questions or comments, anything else from the council? With that, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, any questions or comments from any members of the audience?
Can't resist the opportunity. Option finance is perfect. But under police operational deficiencies, and on the drawings, I realize they're exceptional. I don't see an elevator.
We haven't drawn that rectangly.
But we are going to.
There is budget and there will be an elevator.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Any final closing moving thoughts or comments from members of the council? All right, well, I heard majority want to move forward with option 4.
Next steps, we will memorialize the direction we've heard tonight into the written plan. You'll see that very shortly. When we get concurrence on that written plan more formally, we will move forward on implementation. Thank you, everybody on the council.
Great, well, thank you for all the hard work, because I just want to thank everybody, we're nowhere near finished yet, but I just want to thank everybody for always trying to come up with the best solution, no matter what direction was given. It's sort of, you're working on a Rubik's Cube, you're getting to a solution, and somebody takes it away from you, messes it all up, and gives it back to you. That's been going on for 10 years. So I appreciate all that. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to adjourn carries. Thank you and good night. Appreciate everyone coming.